Hey, David, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining today.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so we're excited to have you. I know as Sarah and I were kind of looking through, like, hey, what type of careers do we want to interview people about? We were like, hey, it would be really cool to interview a collegiate athlete and kind of see what that experience was about. So, can you kind of give us a little bit of your background, who you are, what you do, what you've kind of done in your education slash career journey?
Absolutely. So I was a student athlete for many years, starting obviously in high school and then transitioning to the University of Utah. I played 5 years at the University of Utah and was able to get two bachelor's degrees. So because of all the injuries that I went through, I was able to extend my education about a year and a half and likely have enough credits to get that second major. The first one was in speech communication with an emphasis in education. And then the second was in family studies, specifically human development and how we transition mostly through adolescent and then into adulthood. I wasn't expecting to get a second major, but luckily, not luckily, but unluckily, due to all the injuries on my foot, I had enough credits saved up in family studies where I could cash in on another bachelor's. And I don't know, the classes that I took was mainly a professor that taught those courses. I was really intrigued by his teaching. He had classes on fatherhood, on adolescence, on there was one class I really liked. It was life coaching, just life coaching in general, specifically in the hospital setting for kids who are struggling being comfortable staying at a hospital. And there's a position, a child life specialist, that's what it is. Just helping the children feel more comfortable. And I knew that basketball wasn't going to last forever. And I mean, this goes to anyone I talk to, you got to have a plan B. So my plan A was to play professionally, make millions of dollars. It's going to be great. Unfortunately, with all of the injuries, that didn't happen, but I had my education to back up on. And I knew I didn't want to work in an office 9 to 5, 8 to 4, whatever your time frame is. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be out in the community working with young adults, preferably 16 to 25 years of age. And so that helped me with narrowing down what I wanted to do, because by the time you are a junior in college, you have to pick a major. And I waited to the last second to do that. I thought my major was going to be basketball, right? But no, it really is a student athlete. There's a reason they call it a student athlete, not an athlete student. So very demanding. I mean, you're taking 12 to 16 credits. And then on top of that, you're working out 4 to 5 hours a day. And then some guys had part-time jobs. So they would work at the local student center or the rec center just to make enough money. Unfortunately, when I was going to school, we didn't have these NIL deals. You couldn't get paid for your likeness and your image. Now you can. You can make six figures just by having the right last name or having a certain skill and ability. And so, yeah, the guys had to pay for gas money, for date money, for food. And the list goes on. It's great to have a full scholarship, but it only goes so far. And so, yeah, that was one reason I chose the U, is because of the academics, not just because of their success in basketball, but I wanted a school that academically stood out amongst the rest. And there's a lot of good schools in Utah, but it just felt right to go to Salt Lake at the U. So I don't know if that answers the question. I kind of rambled on, but
no, I think that's an important distinction that you made, right? Is that you were a student athlete, not an athlete student, right? Like, I think especially kids, in high school, they have the big dreams of, yeah, I'm going to play for the NBA or I'm going to do this. And, like you said, plan B, right? And having an education as kind of like a fallback is a good route, right? Because not everybody is going to make the NBA or a professional sports team, right? But I also love that you were able to kind of find the silver linings amidst like your injuries and the setbacks that you had with athletics, right? Like hey, now I get two degrees instead of just one, right? You were able to capitalize on those opportunities. And so with getting those degrees, you mentioned you didn't want a 9 to 5 job. You wanted to be in the community and helping serve. So what is it that you do now with the degrees that you earned?
Yeah, so I work for a company called At the Crossroads, ATC. We're here locally in St. George, and we take young adults who are 18 to 25. Some are a little bit older than that, but typically it's 18 to 25. And we just help them transition out of their parents' basement, right? We want to get them out. We want to teach them how to work. COVID wasn't good for most, but it helped us as a business because we can get them out socializing. Anxiety is huge for these guys, not so much substance, but more so anxiety, depression, just that social fear of talking to someone face to face. And I'm not a therapist, but I guess my official title is program director / service coordinator. So I coordinate a lot of our community service projects here in St. George, from working at assisted or volunteering at assisted living homes to being involved with the Special Olympics. There's a group down here that does Parkinson's kickboxing. So there's people that struggle with Parkinson's disease, and we get them kickboxing. We hold pads for them. We put on a bodysuit. We let them punch us, and we have a good time with it. But they get me dressed up as Santa Claus during Christmas, and we deliver presents to kids. Luckily, it doesn't scare them too much. Yeah, and I've been at it for about 6 years now. And the way I got kind of caught up into it is I was playing basketball in LA, and my last year playing basketball, I was here in St. George visiting family for Christmas. And there's a family from a church mission that I served in North Carolina who were also visiting here. And you probably know the Fishers. So
Yeah.
the Fishers were here, and their daughter lives in St. George. And so I wanted to visit the Fishers. They were visiting their daughter, and I met this guy named Brian Virgin, who owns the company. And I didn't know something like this existed. I thought it was all just for adolescents. And I wanted to possibly work on a boys ranch or work in a residential treatment program. And nothing against what they do. I think what they do is great. But I really fell in love with working with adults, because if they don't agree with what I have to say, hey, there's the door, buddy. You're an adult. Walk out. You might have to live on the street for a little bit, and I'm here. Don't lose my number. I'm here to support you, but we just can create a lot more natural consequences with what we do at the Crossroads. And again, residential treatment, it's tough because there's a lot of liability there, but yeah, I think just working with adults has kind of been my jam the past 6 years.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And previously you mentioned that you kind of wanted a job where you were working with like 18 to 25-year-olds. Was that kind of something you figured out while you were getting your degree, or how did you find out that that was something you would be passionate about and something you would want to do to help people?
Honestly, just people in general. I just wanted to work with people, not in a sales position or over the computer, but just something face to face. I've always enjoyed working with the youth within our church. And then having my own kids, I think that made that decision even easier, because I want them to succeed in life, but I also want the world to teach them just as much as I try to. And so, yeah, I mean, honestly, I think Plan B just kind of fell into my lap. But at the same time, I knew basketball wasn't going to last forever, like I stated previous. But I wanted to make sure I was networking. I was meeting people, talking to them about their profession, pretending to enjoy what they were saying, even though I knew I had no interest in what they were doing. But at the same time, giving them the benefit of just talking about what they do. And I really believe it's more so who you know rather than what you know nowadays. Obviously you got to have some skills in what you want to do, but knowing people in certain professions, and that's great you're doing this, because it applies to this podcast, is being able to find interests out there. And the only way you're going to do that is by opening your mouth.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I love you hit on something that I'm big on too. It's like networking, right?
Yeah.
It is about who you know and implementing the skills that you have. And I look back and think like, even with the school that I co-founded, Mountain Point Academy, like
Right.
it was all networking, right? Like I was able to connect with a friend from college who is now a principal, and now he's our principal, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you have a skill set. I know you. We need help, right? And so it's all about forging those connections and things.
Right.
And you kind of, took advantage of that while you were in basketball, knowing that like, this isn't going to last forever, right? Like you look at Michael Jordan, Shaq, like all of them, right? Their career runs its course. Like you said, they can't do that till retirement at 65, right? It's retirement's 30 years before that,
Right. And they're making more money doing what they're doing now than what they did playing on a court. So
right.
yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So I love that you were able to kind of seize the day and find the opportunities in just the daily interactions. And so, for you who had played basketball for a long time, were super passionate about it. How did you kind of make that mental shift from kind of realizing, oh, this isn't going to last forever, to now I'm going to have a career and I need to be interested in this? Like what was that kind of mental process like for you?
It was tough. And some days I still go through the what ifs. What if I didn't get injured, if I could play longer? Sometimes I feel like I didn't get the closure that I wanted with basketball. But what has helped in my transition, there's a couple of things. The first thing is coaching my kids. That's been huge. But before coaching them, I coached the former Dixie State, now Utah Tech University. And for 4 years, I coached the big guys. And that helped kind of smooth the transition from basketball to real life, to putting food on the table other than playing a game. And then again, the second piece is that transition to coaching the kids and working with them and just seeing their enjoyment with it. Luckily, they do enjoy it, and I want them to, because a lot of kids nowadays, they third, fourth grade, they're quitting these sports because A, you can't have multiple sport athletes anymore. I feel like everyone's honing in on just one sport, and B, kids are a little bit softer nowadays. It's very true. They don't take the criticism as much. So you got to be able to work with them at the same time, push them to a point that they can't get there themselves. So coaching has been big. I would say, again, just staying busy, helping that transition. I'll be honest, there are days, as I mentioned before, where the what ifs, I really wish I could play basketball and get paid to do it again. But then I go play pickup ball with neighborhood dads reliving their glory days, and I hurt for the next week or so. Okay, there's a reason I don't do this anymore now that I'm in my mid-30s. It doesn't sound old, but basketball does take a beating, especially the taller you are.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know. That'd probably be my go-to answer for that.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you being candid about that, because there might be some student athletes that are listening and thinking, what will I do if this sport I love doesn't work out, or this music career that I'm chasing doesn't work out? Like what's the practicality of it? And I think looking at it as, I got to participate in this thing I was passionate about, and I had a run at it. I was able to do it, and now I have this career that I still enjoy, where I feel like your coaching skills from basketball probably translate to the life coaching that you're now doing in, at the Crossroads, right? Like you're helping them transition, like this is life, this is how we do it. And coaching and having that kind of, figure where you're able to make an impact and help them as well. So I think if all of us, can, because I myself have asked multiple times well, what if, right? What if my life had gone what if I had taken advantage of this, or what if I had done this, right? And you can drive yourself crazy asking what if, right? Because it's kind of like, well, I got to accept what is and make the most of it, look to your networking opportunities, your just different things that pop up, and kind of seizing the day with those. And so I love that that was kind of your journey, right? Like, oh, I can't do it, but I will teach it, right? And that's kind of a good transition point for a plan
For
B.
sure. Yeah, and I mean, the student athletes that do listen to this that want to become the professional athletes, not to kill their dreams, but I mean, I it's been a while since I looked up this percentage, but it is a fraction of a percentage that make it from high school to college and then on professionally. And even going overseas. I mean, there's money to be made overseas playing sports, especially basketball. But that small percentage that make it to the NBA is very, very small. But there's still hope. And again, I like the profession I'm in because we do hire a lot of former athletes because we have to be competitive. If the coaching we're giving to these young men isn't working one day, we got to go back to the drawing board. And our owner, Brian, always says it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? You're always in the war room figuring out, okay, well, this doesn't work, then let's try this. And again, at the end of the day, you're just teaching them as much as you can, allowing them to live their lives, because you'd rather them make mistakes making their own choices rather than just following everything you're telling them or you're trying to guide them to do. And there's going to be more invested interest if they're the ones creating the idea instead of just not being original.
Yeah. It's that intrinsic motivation versus the extrinsic, right? Like
100%.
Comes from inside, you're more invested. You're like, I'm gonna own this, and I want to do this for me, not for anybody else, right? And something interesting you said about the spaghetti sticking to the wall, right, is I feel like that's strategy, right? Every day you're strategizing, how is this going to work, is this going to work? And that's probably a skill that athletes probably pick up in spades, right? Because you're on the court, you're on the field, you're in the rink, you're on the arena. Like, it's the strategy, it's the what's going to work, what's going to stick. And so I think having those applicable skills from being an athlete are crucial for a career later, and just kind of the translation of that, right? And I mean, I am not an athletic person. I don't have the skills. I don't have the coordination, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It is totally, like I did play volleyball for a year. My dad forgot that I played volleyball for a year. We were
Great
on
sport.
videos.
Yeah.
Who gave you a jersey? Thanks, Dad. So, but I was able to learn some skills from that. And I think if that's kind of the attitude and the approach that you have is, like you said, plan A, plan B, right? It can translate and help, and it's not a waste. You're using your passion to learn some skills that translate to life and helping other people and different things like that you might want to do in the long run. And so with your career here, helping these young adults transition into life, like, what would you say is maybe your best, like, that you love about the job, and what's the hardest thing about the job?
Yeah, just to echo what we've been talking about, the best part is the drawing room, is trying to figure out each day is different. I don't have the same routine. It's not monotonous, it's not tedious. It can be tedious at times, but it's different every day. And it's very applicable to sports. I tell the kids that I coach, I say, if you predetermine the move you're going to make before you make the move, then it's not going to work most of the time. But if you take what the defense gives you and you counter it, then most of the time you're going to score or you're going to make a good play. And the same thing in life. Like, if you go into the day, obviously you're going to have your checklist, you're going to have your to-do, but you got to be willing to adapt to what life hits you that day. You got to be willing to take what your clients or your students give you and just work with it and meet them at their level rather than trying to compare them to you or to your colleagues. I can only compare Jimmy to Jimmy, and that's it. And so I think that's my favorite part, is just having a game plan, but making adjustments as needed. Those halftime adjustments are crucial.
Yeah.
Probably, I think the worst and the best kind of go hand in hand. Is
Yeah.
the worst part is that can drive you crazy when you can't figure out the adjustment, or you can't figure out this one dude that you're just hitting your head against the wall. um I would have to say, because I'll be honest, there's times I do struggle with helping guys regulate when they're dysregulated. I mean, that's a big thing I'm working with my staff that are in these homes, is don't get caught up in their boiling points. Their failures are their failures, their success is their success. And there have been times where I have met them at their boiling point and I haven't caught myself. Maybe shouldn't have said some things at the moment. And that was early on in my career in this field. I would have done the same thing on the court. Now it's a little different when you're working with young adults who are struggling. But yeah, probably that would be the worst, is just when the dysregulated don't want to regulate and there's
It's
nothing you
hard.
can do about it. I tell my guys, I say, hey, our best staff, mentor, life coach, whatever you want to call them, is the world. It's not me, it's not you, it's the world teaching these consequences. If you don't have enough
Yeah.
money to buy food because you don't want to get a job, there's a homeless shelter around the corner who's handing out boxes of food. And that's
Yeah.
your mom and dad are going to pay for your food, right? This is on you, Jimmy. And so that's when things get real. Our goal is to help parents be comfortable while their kid is uncomfortable, and that could be a task. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and that's hard too, right? Because I'm
right,
sure the parents probably get a little dysregulated because
for
they're so,
sure.
oh my
Yes,
gosh, I give my kid, I have to save them. I have to, we all go to that fix it mindset where, oh, just let me take it from you. Let me fix it for you. But
right.
that's not learn, right? And it's like the school of hard knocks, right? Like
That's it.
the real,
That's it.
uh, yeah, this is what it is.
Yep.
So
And our coaching just isn't the kids; it's parents. I mean, luckily we have a great therapeutic side to our program, and our therapists are wonderful, working with the parents and helping everyone be on the same page and easing a little bit of their anxiety. You're still going to have it as a parent. I mean, it's natural. So yeah, that's a good point.
yeah. Well, and I love that. I've said this for years about, all sorts of programs, residential, what you're doing, transitional programs, young adult programs. I think it's great that there's that family component as well, because it really is, they say it takes a village, and your village
Yes,
needs to understand where you're coming from, right? And if your behaviors continue to trigger them and vice versa, like it's just going to be this vicious cycle that you're stuck in. And
yes,
so I love when programs provide that whole component, right? Of it's not
yeah.
just the individual, it's the family. And my dad is a licensed clinical social worker, and
Oh
he's
yeah.
been in RTCs and he's done the family therapy and this and that. And, and I can see like just how beneficial it is, because I mean, I'm in that world too, right? Like we work with a lot of kids that are in RTCs or transition programs to get them caught up with their academics, right? And so we have those conversations with parents too sometimes, even though we're not the therapists. We're like, okay, well, kind of got to set a routine at home so that they'll stick
Right,
to it, right? Because
for sure.
yeah, they need that support. Otherwise, they're going to fall right back into old habits, which, I mean, we're human. We all do that with our own things, right?
Yep,
So yeah,
that's true.
awesome. Well, sorry, go ahead.
No. I just you bring up a good point. Where it takes a village, it takes that treatment team all working together. Um, and yeah, I mean, we can't be more invested than they are in their life, right? And I think a big part of our goal is to help that young adults go to bed at night not asking, how am I doing in the program, but rather, how am I doing in life? We have 4 homes in town here, 2 male, 1 female, and then like a transition into the community type home where there's a little less structure. They kind of are doing their own thing, and nowhere on these homes does it say At the Crossroads or any type of program. I mean, we try to emulate as much college student housing life as possible within reason. That lacks a lot of executive functioning for most of our guys. And so there's still quite a bit of structure built for them. But again, ask yourself, how am I doing in life? Not how am I doing in a program? What hoops do I have to jump through just to make mom and dad happy so then I can go live my life? No, that's backwards. We're talking about levels or phases. We're talking about life. So
yeah, totally. Well, and I think that's a huge kind of focus that we have here too at Mountain Point Academy, is to like, hey, how can you be a good citizen, right? Like your learning that you're having here is not just going to end in high school. Like you're building your character, you're building habits for a work ethic and being a good person. And, so it's going to continue on. So yeah, kind of reflecting, how does this tie into me as a person, and how am I building my character so that I can contribute to society and be a good citizen, that I can be that friend that somebody comes to if they need help, and it's kind of, I think we get stuck in the education space with, oh, well, just go to high school, graduate high school, go to college, graduate college. But we miss out on a lot of those other just basic learning skills of, well, what are you learning outside the classroom? That's also
life isn't linear. It doesn't have to follow this perfect line, right?
Yeah. I think society sets those expectations, but it's like, hey, you do, right? Like everybody's journey looks a little different, and that's okay. And, giving yourself that grace and space to explore and learn who you are with, character building and natural consequences and all the things.
For sure.
Right. So awesome. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, David. One question that we ask all of our guests, because we just love to hear kind of the hindsight that people gain. But if you could go back to your high school self and give yourself a word of advice, what would you say?
Be more patient, I'd say, for sure. I feel like I rushed the recruiting process too much. And I love my time at the University of Utah. We had our struggles. I had 3 different coaches, 62 teammates, which is unheard of. I mean, no college athlete goes through that. So I learned a lot through those resilient phases, but I wish I would have taken more time to go on visits, to evaluate my options, and then not have to worry about signing during the early signing period. So you can sign, I believe it was like November or after the high school season. And I think as a 17-year-old, I was just wiped out from all the people who were trying to recruit me and reaching out. I didn't want to be bothered. I was a little bit more of an introvert than I am now. And I just wanted to be done. But again, if I was just a little bit more patient, viewing my options, that would be key. And there's not a whole lot I could do as far as injuries go. I mean, I know they have a lot more science around preventative work to help your body stay less injury prone. But as a 7-footer, you just never know. You're going to have knee problems, back problems, foot problems. The list goes on and on. And so I guess taking that and trying to live it with my kids is, hey, are you stretching? Or are you just making sure your body feels good? Because you're going to go through those growing pains. But again, just circling back before I get ahead of myself is patience. Just take the time to evaluate options and go from there. So,
I think that's great advice, because I think we all are always in such a rush to like get to the next phase that we just, don't really pause to think, oh, is this the best thing for me? And the patience and the saying, good things take time. And it's like, I hate that saying, but it's so true.
Yeah. And then one last thing is something I work with my guys all the time. This phrase I love to use is easy, hard, hard, easy. So they use it in wilderness therapy all the time because it sucks living out in the woods for 3 months. I couldn't do it. And so, but if you choose the easy path, a lot of times your life gets harder down the road. But if you choose kind of a harder path, a lot of times life gets a little bit easier. Not to say that it's going to be perfect, but easy, hard, hard, easy. And I truly believe that pretty much every easy street out there is a dead end, as far as I know. I know there's a few out there, but yeah, and being an athlete is fun. It's not as glamorous as most people think. You can be out there chasing money as much as possible, but people don't see what it's like behind the doors, as far as dealing with the money, dealing with your body hurting all the time, being constant ice and compression nonstop. I wish I took advantage of walking the trails of Salt Lake a little bit more, hiking, biking. That's the last thing I wanted to do after a workout. I just wanted to lay on the couch and take ibuprofen and not move.
I'm sure.
So again, there's a sacrifice with whatever you do. Just know that being an athlete, there's plenty of sacrifice out there. But again, students that want to be student athletes or professional athletes, go for it. No one's stopping you but yourself. So
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing, David. I
yeah.
really appreciate all of your insights. And yeah, listeners, let us know what you thought of this episode. If you're a student athlete, you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you and see what you thought of today's episode. So thanks again for joining us, David. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.